Hey, welcome to the Living the Dream podcast, where we help you get clarity, build skills, enhance your character, curate your environment, take daily massive action, and develop a positive mindset. Join our community by heading over to workwithtimmydouglas.com and get our free book and list of questions that will help you build an impactful and purposeful life. Enjoy the show. All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Living the Dream podcast. Today on the show, we have Gabi Robledo, who is a flow state and mindset coach. Gabi, how you doing?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
I am fantastic. Thanks so much for asking. And we like to jump right in. So if you could start with just telling us a little bit more about yourself and what you like to do for fun, that'd be great.
Yeah, I have a pretty unconventional life even now, but kind of what makes led me to where I am in my life now is that I grew up living in an RV and traveling the world since I was 14 years old. So when I was when I was 14, my parents decided they had got sick of the rat race. And the lease on our house was coming up to an end, and my parents were like looking at each other and saying, "Oh, well, we want to go on these summer road trips. So why don't we just move into the RV just during the summer and then we'll find a new rental by the time fall comes back around." Well, we move into the RV, we go on this trip, and we move into the RV on April Fools. And it was the best and worst April Fool's joke ever when my mom was like, "Oh, we're going to move into the RV for 6 weeks." And then, 6 months later, 6 years later, April Fool's, kids. So I've been living in an RV since then. So I'm going on 8 years of living as a nomad. I grew up in that time. I was homeschooled my whole life, but since I was homeschooled, it was a very easy transition to what some people call road schooling, what many people call unschooling. And frankly, unschooling is probably the better term for it because even though I spent most of my life going through a pretty traditional homeschooling life, by the time I was 15, living such an unconventional life and questioning so many things about the path that I wanted to take forward, my mom encouraged me to ask myself what I really wanted to spend my life doing for my career. Do I really want to go to college? And that led me on a path where I took my passion at the time, which was adventure and travel, and I started my first business, which was an adventure travel blog called Nomads with a Purpose, when I was 15 years old. And that was when we were out on this like 6 month. We bought one-way tickets to Europe, and we're on this trip where we're living in an RV in Europe now, on this just free flowing meandering through Europe, and just the entire educational experience of being placed literally in an unknown cultures almost every single day. It just led me on the path of trying to create my own job out of my passions. And then since then, I've, been kind of that entrepreneurial mindset ever since then. So I continue to live nomadically, but not only do I run an adventure travel blog, but the pursuit of adventure really ended up kind of just being more of a tool for learning mindfulness. I think a lot of people would always look at me and say like, "Oh, I bet you learned so much from going to museums and cathedrals in Europe." And I'd go, "No, it was not about that. It was actually more about the things like having to adapt on the fly to, we had to figure out where to sleep every night. We had to, sometimes we were in these situations of like, we don't know how to speak a language and we're trying to figure out how to get to where we're going." On top of that, there was like this personal element where, because we were living this life, I was very much rejected from my peers back home because I had a pretty traditional life before that with competitive sports. And all of my friends and all of my really even extended family, they really all rejected us. So there was this constant having to step into the unknown and embrace courage while also having to work on my own feelings of not being welcome, being rejected from society, being rejected from my friends, which forced me to kind of confront my own feelings of unworthiness and not enoughness. So travel really became this pursuit of me having to confront my own limiting beliefs, my own things that were standing in my way. And in the end, that led me to kind of being more passionate about starting a personal development coaching business, which is now called Be the Hero Academy, alongside a climbing coaching business, which is really the same mentality of in both situations, whether climbing or in life. I really am passionate about helping people to identify the self-limiting belief that's standing in their way from whether a great adventure climbing or the thing that they really want to experience in their life.
I gotcha. That is epic. So you've been on the road since 14, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. And that was with your parents. Are you now on the road alone? Are you still with your family?
So now, my whole family. I'm one of five siblings. My family, my parents, and my youngest siblings still live nomadically. I live nomadically on my own, and I have two other siblings that semi live nomadically still, but kind of like travel slowly, going from place to place, kind of months at a time.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Okay. And so living in an RV, traveling the world since 14, you're still living nomadically. You're a flow state and mindset coach and a climbing coach. And what do you do for fun out on the road?
So I have a crazy addiction for climbing that pretty much my whole travel schedule revolves around trying to climb in different mediums in different places. So whether that's mountain climbing, sport climbing, trad climbing, these a bunch of different forms of climbing pretty much are the source of my passion to travel. But I also, I mean, when I'm not climbing, it's my travel is based around surfing, mountain biking, hiking, and snowboarding. And it sounds like the ultimate like privilege to say I just get to spend my year chasing these sports. But I mean, the reality is I do get to do that, but I also like roam from place to place, kind of just like establish a routine in different places, in places where it enables me to enjoy those sports when I have free time.
Yeah, I gotcha. And does it get lonely out on the road?
Well, the benefit of having a whole family that is nomadic is that we're kind of like this Mad Max fleet. So my mom and my younger siblings and my dad, they still live nomadically, so I intersect with them very often. So it's very rare that I'm actually by myself. If anything, this is actually the first one of the first periods this month where I've been traveling alone because normally my sister, who was only 3 years different in age from me, had been traveling with me full time, and we kind of had our own group traveling. So it can be. I mean, this is the first time I've probably experienced that, and if I had to go through it for long periods of time, I would absolutely say so. But it helps having family and having friends in different communities that I've gotten to know as because I come back to lots of the same places often in my travels, so I kind of have communities in different places, which helps kind of. It's nice. It's a nice friend circles in different places you go.
Yeah. Yeah. And can you tell us about the monthly expenses for traveling nomadically? Like, do you have a clear number that you can give us, or is it different for everybody?
Well, it's so there's a big yeah, there's a lot of spectrum there because I mean, for me myself, as an individual, of course you've got like your normal food expense is going to be the same, so that depends on the person, right? Like there can be a huge variety there, but in terms of your actual living expense, for myself, so you can free camp for first of all, and if you free camp every single day in a month, your living expense is zero, and if your trailer or your RV is paid off, then your living expense is zero. Where I am in Wyoming right now, there's actually an amazing free camping place in City Park where you have water, you have restrooms, like you really have amazing amenities, and it costs you nothing. However, like if you want hookups, which water, electric, sewer, for your RV, you have RV parks and campgrounds, and a lot of RV parks now have monthly rates. And those can vary between anywhere between $500 a month and $1,500 a month in bigger cities and stuff. So like if I'm in a small town where I am now, $500 a month, but maybe I travel and I go camping in Park City, and I might decide to get a campground for one night, and it's $30, and then it's free if I'm driving and decide to just pull off from the side of the road. So, but I mean, as a guideline, just it really depends what, as a traveler, your comfort level is of what you need in terms of amenities, and then just your general living expenses that you'd have, you know, uh, in a regular life too. Kind of those stay the same between your food and your phone bills and all of those things. That stays the same, but the big difference is depends. You can save a lot of money in an RV if you're willing to be a little uncomfortable, or if you have a really good setup to be off grid.
Yeah, I gotcha. So if you have a paid off RV, which is about what, 20,000, $30,000?
I mean, then there's a lot. I mean, my RVs have always been old, but they're always paid off. So like, you can get RVs, old RVs, and if you're willing to remodel them, $10,000, $8,000, 12. A lot of people are really good at remodeling RVs, but yeah, anywhere between 10 and, but I mean, new RVs these days, I don't know, they're really expensive, but
I got you.
Just depends.
Okay, okay. So you can get an RV for, let's call it 12 to 15K. You can get a solid RV where if you can remodel it and stuff, you'll be good to go. And then food expenses, for some people that's like 100 a week, 50 a week. It just depends on who you are. And phone expenses, but outside of like RV, food, and phone. So RV could be completely free. So then you really just have food, phone, and is there anything else? Like, do you have health insurance? I'm so curious.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the person in my well, the whole time we grew up in an RV too. We never had health insurance, so I guess that's a personal preference thing. The big one, living in an RV, you save a lot of money in your living expense, your house, your campground expense, but your gas expense is a big one. So this is where like a lot of because there's a pretty big RVing community now. A lot of people call it like slow travel RVing because it is expensive to tow. So I have a truck and trailer. Some people have, different RV setups, but when I'm actually towing, I'm getting 8 to 10 miles per gallon, which is pretty expensive. And if you're like driving long distances, there's a big chunk of
Yeah,
that's a big chunk of your expense. Of course, if I'm staying put for an entire month, never towing, then and I'm just traveling, going through this small little 5 mile radius town, then my gas expense is like what $100 for the month.
yeah,
But if I were to if we traveled across to the East Coast from the West Coast, then you could easily get that up to $1,000 if you were traveling fast enough.
yeah.
So it really depends on kind of your well, one, your desire for your lifestyle, and then the budget of what you're willing to spend on how much freedom of movement you really need.
So it sounds like you could easily get under 1,000 a month and then make it pretty tight, but you could get under 500 a month. Does that sound accurate?
That is true, and it's like a big thing. Part of that is how willing you are to, or what your lifestyle is, because I personally, I think my living expense ends up being more averagely between 1,000 and 1,500,
Mhm.
because I like to, even if I'm staying put in one place for a month, I get antsy and I need to go on a trip and I need to drive 3 hours on this trip because I can't stay put. And I have that, like, I need to do something, I need to have some fun thing that I'm doing on the weekend or something like that. So you definitely could get it under 1,000 if you're like loving just to camp in off-grid locations and you're comfortable in, whether you have no amenities, you're comfortable with no amenities, or you have a good setup to have those amenities in just these off-grid places where you're kind of just sitting and camping. But I know a lot of people do that. Well, they just kind of like work in virtual or in off-grid locations, and they just work virtually, or they don't even work virtually. They just take it slow, move from place to place, and enjoy the process. So there's so much like personality that comes into play and lifestyle that you're really wanting.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Man, that's so interesting. And can you free camp for an indefinite amount of time, or is there a time limit then they kick you off the campground?
Well, so when you're free camping, you're never in campgrounds. You're usually in, so there's different places you can free camp. Here in town, where I am in Lander, Wyoming, is kind of unusual in that it's a city park, so it's you know uh, public property or that the city owns. And they let you stay for 3 days but you need to move every 3 days. So you have to move spots, but technically they don't have, this one's weird because they don't actually have a limit. Most places that you can free camp are BLMs and national forest land. And those places generally have anywhere between a 14 and 21 day camping limit. Um, Now, granted, that's depends on how enforced it is. But generally, there's usually a limit that's like 14 days or something. And then sometimes it's just like you have to move or you have to be out for 24 hours before you can come back in. There's kind of like a lot of gray space. And those are the main areas where people will be free camping, BLM and national forest land.
And what's BLM?
Bureau of Land Management. So it's basically like national forest, but it's a little bit less regulated, I think. I think. Don't take my word for that. But it's basically like national forest land.
When I show up, I'm gonna quote you and say, Gabby said so.
Gabby said, "You're."
Awesome. Well, I'll stop grilling you on the nomadic lifestyle now. It was just so intriguing. Like it's so, especially
Yeah,
like You're so young and you've been doing it for so long already. Do you ever plan on like just settling down and like just getting a house and going back to that? Or are you like, man, when I'm 65, I'm still gonna be on the road?
I mean, that's a good question. I'm sure I imagine myself, this is probably the first year of my life that I've even had any sort of, actually tiredness that comes from being nomadic. Like, this whole like idea of having to constantly think about the logistics of where you're going next. This is the first time I've been in the house a little bit exhausting. And so I'm sure at some point I will get to a point where we'll try to figure out having a house. But I even imagine that once I quote unquote settle down, I will having the ability in my life to be able to travel is, kind of just a natural evolution that I foresee. Just having almost more of a balance, I would
Yeah,
say, having that stability mixed with movement and roaming.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Okay. Well, tell me a little bit more about what the day to day looks like as a mindset coach and a climbing coach. How are you getting your clients? What are you doing with your clients? All that good stuff.
Yeah, so they're very, very, very similar. They're kind of like highly interlinked because some of people come to me as climbers, and they're really working more on life coaching stuff. So even though I'm a climbing coach, I'm really working with people the same way. So I have different programs, different lengths of time. Some of my programs are one-on-one coaching only. So I'm just talking to people on the phone, and we're basically assessing, like, kind of like how taking your day, taking your aims for what you're where you're trying to get to in your life, how you're trying to feel in your life. A lot of people who I'm working with are trying to come into a space of confidence, fearlessness, courageousness. They're trying to connect back to their bodies from a space of really combining getting out of your head and out of your anxiety and grounding into your body so that you can start to feel into that space of inner peace so that you can create a vision and create clarity and create desire for what you really want in your life. And so there's like a little bit there's a lot of grace based depending on what people's lifestyle is that they're coming to, but I talk with people and kind of just assess like how, what happened in your day, what are like the good things that happened in your day, what are the triggers that came up. And once we get into the triggers, because sometimes it's hard for people to recognize their triggers, which is why the emphasis for me is helping people get to the root of their self-limiting beliefs, the root belief systems from their childhood that are replaying for their whole lives, that keeping them stuck in cycles. And so using the day-to-day life as indicators into what those beliefs are, where they came from. And then as the coaching evolves with people, we're able to go from identifying to identifying them faster in the moment through, some of my coaching programs are daily so that I'm helping people gain momentum in the process of recognizing as those beliefs come up, when they're being triggered, when they're feeling down, or even when they're feeling happy, realizing what beliefs are coming or around that. And so as they work with me, we go from identifying to shifting to rewiring it into a positive new belief to enable them to step into more confidence, more feelings of enoughness, more courageousness, and creating more vision for what they're trying to get to in their life.
Mm, I gotcha. So it's really all around beliefs and what feelings those beliefs are triggering, and then how all of that aligns with the daily action they're taking.
Absolutely. And helping them to, yeah, get to, for climbing, it's a little bit more, it's easier for people to come up with goals around their climbing because it's like, well, I want to climb this grade, it's here in my physical reality. But when it comes to, trying to, so many of us are stuck in, I remember I was like this, and like I was sharing earlier, it's my own journey with feeling stuck in my own emotional patterns of feeling like I wasn't enough, feeling like um I needed to do more to be more. Having my own beliefs that I was trapped in is kind of what inspired me to do this because I totally get what it's like for most of us feel like we're going through our lives, and even when we're happy with our lives, there's still these recurring things that always come up in our life. It's like we repeat these patterns. Sometimes we don't realize we're repeating the patterns, but they come up, and when we do, we're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing the same thing again. And you end up feeling these negative emotions, and we want to live a life of emotional freedom, of feeling emotional fulfillment, even stepping into a sense of purpose in our life. But the gap between where we are and where we'd like to be feels like sometimes such a far journey. and you're like, I don't even know how to get there because I'm so in my struggle. And when we're in our struggles, oftentimes it's just so much easier when you have a coach in your life to help you navigate, hey, this is what's happening right now. This is the belief that you're seeing. It's so much easier to see the beliefs that are running for when you're that person looking from the outside. And so, yeah, it's just getting to recognize that the core obstacles that are standing in the way, and also creating simple steps to get to where you'd like to go instead of just worrying so much like, that's never going to happen. That's just too far out in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotcha. I love it. And you said your motivation behind all this, correct me if I'm wrong, is really that you just love helping people identify those beliefs and help them grow past it, or would you put your motivation in other words?
That's a good way to describe it. I think just feeling into my own human experience of trying to navigate um, being an emotional being, because human beings, even though first world countries like to deny it, we're emotional beings, not logical beings. And so life is emotion. And at the same time, probably the biggest societal block that kind of just stops all that is the feeling that, and I'm the feeling that emotions are not really okay, and like I shouldn't be emotional. And when I have struggles, that makes me like, I guess I'm like less adequate as a person because I experience struggle and I need to hide that. I need to repress it. And so often we go through our whole lives, and emotion is energy, and it gets just stored in our bodies when we don't feel it. So many people, especially people who are, in their 40s and older, they've gone through their whole life never experiencing some of the pains that happened in their life, that it becomes harder to let those things out. So my motivation is seeing within myself that if I don't feel my emotions will control me in another way. And it's just going to make me feel trapped in my own cage in myself where I don't even feel like myself. And seeing that I feel like that, and I'm getting a head start by doing this from such a young age, and really feeling like I resonate with that struggle, with that pain, with that hurt, and I would like to help as many people as I can to get out of the cages of the people that we think we're supposed to be instead of the people that we were born to be.
Yeah. I think there's I think there's two types of like suffering. I think there's just classic being human, where it's like you're always going to have some sort of longing or some sort of like, you know, like hunger pains, or you hit your knee or something. Like there's healing that just needs to be done as a human. And then there's like you experience negative emotion, and some could call that some suffering, some people wouldn't. But then I think there's like unnecessary suffering. So I think that's necessary suffering, where it's like it just comes with being human. And there's unnecessary suffering, where it's like you've suffered for so long that you've learned that you're helpless, or that you're comfortable with the suffering. And so then you start doing things to perpetuate the suffering in your life, and it starts compounding on itself. And I think that's when it starts to get unnecessary. And a lot of those beliefs that we learned when we were young and we never felt free to feel that emotion, so we trapped it inside of us, it starts to be like not everything, but most of the things we're doing start to be guided by that emotion, which lead to more of that. But then all we've learned to do is trap it inside of us. So then we do that more, which just negatively compounds on itself. And that's what I'm like, I think a lot of people do a lot of that unnecessary suffering, which is kind of what you're speaking to here, of like helping people outside of that, which I vibe with. That's why I brought all that up. So
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yeah,
really
that's super true. I think and it's funny because that unnecessary suffering, it's very true that it's totally unnecessary suffering. But have you ever dived into the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza before?
I have not. I've heard a lot about him, but I haven't like gone deep.
Yeah. So he talks his when I first found his books and his work, I remember that was kind of the light bulb moment because I've in my own experience, it kind of like you kind of like naturally stumble upon the feeling that, oh, I kind of make some of my problems up. Like if you're on a personal growth journey, you realize that you victimize yourself a few times. And then when I found his work, it was kind of a unique way of describing it because, or not unique way, I mean, it's the scientific way to describe it, but we get addicted to our own suffering. So those necessary hurts happen in our life. And let's say that, something, we go through a pain, we go through a trauma, something happens to us. Those ones maybe were unavoidable, but our brains are addicted to suffering because it feels comfortable, because we get used to it, and we have like this negativity bias. So we
Yep.
see the world looking for the negatives as a way to survive.
Yep.
But we've got the negativity bias, and then most of the thoughts that are going through our brains are subconscious. So we're going through the world and we think that we're thinking positively, but there's a good chance that in that 95%, there's a negative predisposition. And then on top of it, we have this addiction to suffering. And the more likely we are to think and feel a certain way, the more likely we are to continue to think and feel
Yeah.
that way. And I think so. What you're saying is totally true with that unnecessary suffering. It's like, in a way, I empathize for people because it's not their fault, because it's their brain's fault that's getting in the way. But it doesn't mean that you're stuck to it. It doesn't mean that you have to stay in that unnecessary suffering. And so many people just need the support and the guidance and the solutions to actually get out of their own way, get their brains out of their own way, and start taking control of your mind instead of just letting your brain run the show.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I love it. Well, Gabby, let's go ahead and jump into your dreams and goals now. Tell us about your vision for your life, your business, and yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, gosh, I've learned that I need to minimize some of my trying to do too many dreams and goals in my life.
I got you.
Um, but I have some of the things that with the work that I do, with helping people to break their patterns, rewire their brains to get out of those self-limiting beliefs and live their best life. Uh, I hope to see one day an evolution of my work where it's a little bit more in person, getting to exchange the energy with larger groups of people. So right now it's a lot of one-on-one stuff. We're currently, me and my business partner, which is my mom, amazing business partner.
Love it.
We were working at this point to evolve our business into a phase of doing workshops, of coming into, both corporations or yoga studios and doing these workshops where we're getting groups of people to all kind of collaborate as in a workshop environment, because we do this in workshop form. Our main business is Be the Hero Academy, is actually a group coaching membership site. So we have meetings, or we come, once a month, we have meetings of people where we're exchanging this workshop where we're teaching, but we're also getting to share our own personal journeys and interact with people. And I think it would be a really great, it's a dream of mine to have an evolution of that where we're doing it in person, and eventually getting to a point where we're getting to these much larger events, even where we're hosting these events where people can come and have these healing and transformational and experiences of personal growth, where we're doing a combination of all the modalities that we would naturally take people through, which is meditation, journaling, breathwork, and even ice baths, and actually getting to share that energy in person, so that everyone can kind of feed off of that. I think you can share energy virtually, but it's such a different experience to actually hold the space of someone sharing their energy next to you. But as in terms of uh, business goals, that's kind of the really, really biggest one for me. Getting to a point where me and my mom are sharing not only workshops, but also building our speaking business out, to share this whole journey of going from feeling that stuck person, feeling like you're in your victimhood, and really how to shift into being the creator of your life. In terms of more personal goals, climbing tends to be my main source of passionate dreams for the future. I have dreams of being a mountaineer, which is, kind of the current focus this summer, building some skills around, snow travel, glacier travel, to be able to climb some more mixed rock and snow style dreams. Um, I mean, I used to at one point in my life say, I want to climb Denali, but I've actually learned that in the process of me stepping into my dreams, and from a place of non trying to be the best, and I've actually had to, in my mindfulness journeys, a lot of my dreams have become more about the process instead of the result, because that's my addiction is to the results, and I've realized in my mindfulness journey that it's about the process. So just saying things like, well, I want to mountaineer one day, instead of saying, well, I want to climb Denali one day, has been a kind of a growth for me to go through. But I think in the end, because of what I just shared, that my journey has been about that process. I mean, frankly, my dreams and goals for the future is to be like happy. And I think happy really kind of comes down to some basic things, which is you have good relationships in your life, you have a fulfilling career, you're living in your own abundance. It doesn't mean you have to make millions and millions, but whatever abundance serves in the lifestyle you want to live. And having the health to be able to actually go out and do things and experience this world with the people that you love, doing the passions that you love. So I mean, the simple answer is I want to be happy. I would like if there was mountaineering involved, but happiness is really, if mountaineering is involved in that process, then great. If not, if in the process of getting to happy, I have to let that go, then I let that go. But serving people in the way that I can through shared energy with people in person, getting to actually make an impact and reaching my own personal fulfillment would probably be the biggest dreams that I have in my life.
Hmm, I like it. So right now I got in-person work with larger groups of people in the form of workshops, hosting larger events and taking people through different healing modalities. Did I coin that term right? Healing modalities?
Modalities, yes, that's right.
Okay. Building out the speaking business, being a mountaineer, and being happy. Okay.
Sounds
Anything
about
else you want
right.
to add to the list, or we want to keep it
Hmm.
there?
So, oh, okay, last one. I have a lifelong dream of creating the Nomads of the Purpose documentary, which is I've self-committed to that one day. I will share the lessons and the message of my parents' decision to do all this and making a documentary about how something as what now feels like something that was very little in my life and very small, like it's not a big deal. We just moved into an RV. I can't, very few days can go by without me really realizing like how unconventional and the impact that that had on the grand scheme of my mindfulness, self development, personal fulfillment journey. I feel like I overlook often and have come to the realization that this story alone can impact so many people's lives, even if I can't help them by actually coaching them, the story itself can impact people. And so, yeah, the Nomads of the Purpose film is a very big lifelong dream that I don't doubt will happen. Is I guess more of a goal than a dream. And most dreams to me are goals anyway. A lot of people I realize that distinguish those two as dreams are dreams and goals are goals. But everything I shared with you that are dreams are goals to me.
Yeah, I don't like to distinguish the two. I don't. I say dreams and goals, so I get everything out of people, but I want to make those dreams goals. I want to help people make those dreams goals in their life because we really can do just about anything. So, really cool stuff. Okay. So, creating the Nomads with a Purpose documentary, we just added that to the list.
Yeah, just added tack on one more there.
Yeah, tack on one more. Um, cool. So, when can you see yourself hosting your first or next workshop, large event where you're taking people through the healing modalities? Like, what are the kind of barriers you're experiencing right now, and how can we help you get past them?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest things I've had to choose which the priority of those things are. Actually, me and my mom who are coordinating to make these things happen. It's very easy for us to turn the logistics. Like we'll host it here. We're gonna do it. We have our latest ideas of doing an event, this healing modality style and adventure and mindfulness event where people can come and experience adventure and healing at the same time. We're like, oh, we can do this in Moab this fall. So if you're listening to this, keep in mind this could happen. Moab
Sounds
in
like you're kind
fall,
of
but
committing to it right now.
I mean, I'm trying to. But yeah, for us, coming actually the big obstacle for us is that we have so many. I mean, we don't have a ton of businesses, but I have three businesses, and being able to clearly communicate what the right kind of person on the right kind of platform, which event is in alignment. So sometimes where I've had tendency over the past 6 years of my life as an entrepreneur to be a little bit unclear to the people who are listening.
Yeah.
So, between different Instagram accounts, different websites, different blogs, different email lists, I have realized that I've been incohesive about the type of person that is on each email list, the type of person that's following each of my different accounts, and assuming that they're just hearing me on everything. And instead, I realize that my barrier is having to clearly realize the person who I'm speaking to on each platform and not confusing and being able to really offer them the solution that that person is looking for, the emotional, the desired result that that person is looking for on specific places and not trying to mix different offerings with different platforms. I'm not necessarily trying to offer adventure retreats to my uh, personal growth people who
Yeah,
are excited about
arsenal.
personal
Yeah,
growth
yeah,
personal um now, granted, they do sometimes cross over in the actual delivery, but I've realized that, so I have to meet people where they're ready and what they're looking for right now in their life, not where they're going to be, but where they are now and what they need right now. And so the workshops that we're trying to put together, we're trying to put together a series of breathwork workshops at yoga studios for our winter travel so that we can essentially create this little mini tour of places that we come and host these breathworks. Our corporate workshops that we're looking to probably are going to be put on the back burner while we try to work to create these adventure and mindfulness actual events where it's kind of essentially more affordable for people who uh, for like the average person rather than someone who's ready to commit to coaching. This is kind of like an introductory experience, something that's going to make an impact on their life right now and possibly be a segue into a journey or their own journey of self growth that if they're willing to take it further.
Mm, I gotcha. I gotcha. So I'm hearing that the ideal client hasn't always been super clear, super targeted, and super like, what's the word I'm looking for? Locked in. And because of that, some of the messaging could get confused. And I also hear that you're kind of fixing that with the breath work workshops at yoga studios that you're planning in the winter. You kind of got a ideal client there and you have a offer that you're giving them. That's what the focus is now. Is that right?
Yep, that's about right. We really yeah, tried to dial in on like the first step for each person for the different even though we as these people who are like, oh, I just want to help people who have that tendency that I want to help people, you tend to see the similarity amongst a lot of people. You're like, this person might be like this, but I see this root thing, this root core belief that's the same. And so because of that, it's kind of become this weakness of seeing everyone as having the same problem rather than recognizing the different ways that people would describe themselves and the slightly different variations of what they're looking for next. Yeah, we're all trying to get to personal fulfillment and even like live a life of joy and love and even adventure, but what we're ready for at different points has been what we've been working on, what I've been working on, and what you're calling, yeah, the ideal client, really trying to cater and give people the next simplest step for each type of person in different places so that they don't get overwhelmed or confused.
I gotcha. So if you had to pick one aspect of all the businesses, all the ideas, all the ideal clients that you have in your head, if you could only pick one and you had to do it for 10 years, which I know probably sounds crazy because 10 years ago we were both so young. But you had to do it for 10 years straight. And you had to pick the one that would make it rain the most. Which one would that be?
If you had to pick the one that was most, as in like most profitable, you mean?
Yeah, most profitable. Sorry.
Okay. I was just making sure that was all. Because when you first started, I was thinking, oh, which would I like want to do for 10 years? That's actually an interesting uh,
Are they different
crossover there.
answers?
Slightly, potentially. I think though, at the root of it, I think people, even though, it's not like we're trying to be most money driven here, but I think as a natural byproduct, when you are getting that exchange of value and you're being valued for the work you're doing, you can kind of become, I'd say, lenient on the variation that you're serving. So
Mhm.
to answer your question, pro let's see, which person.
Which person and which offer would make it rain the most?
I mean, that is so hard. I would probably say that at the current offering around the journey of using breathwork to relieve anxiety and connect you back to your body if you have not experienced that feeling of grounding and peace your whole life, and you've basically been dissociated from your body for a really long time. That's kind of resulting in a feeling of anxiousness, feeling stuck, and feeling overwhelmed. Then we create a breath work is our solution in our journey that we take people on between different like free offerings, and then eventually getting into one-on-one. We're guiding you through your breathwork experience and actually helping you work through the things that come up in the breathwork experience, because it's kind of like this detoxification process. That would probably be the avenue that I would think would have the most impact on the most amount of people, which as a natural result would probably uh, become that most profitable way. Because I think there's so many people struggle with that. So many people struggle with that anxiety these days, and feeling dissociated or disconnected or not really knowing themselves. And I think that that's the most it's the most solvable, and it's the most common at the same time.
Yeah, I gotcha. I gotcha. And which area would it help them the most in? Their health, their wealth, or their relationships?
Well, that is a really hard question, because I would say it helps with all three of those very, very, very strongly. But hmm, I would
Okay.
say relationships, but I would say relationships first,
Mhm.
health second, wealth third. But I mean, if I had to answer, that would be it. But I think breath work has the ability, because breath work alone doesn't change things until you have intention aligned with breath work. And so I think relationships, though, is what we try to bring people. Their number one focus is most often when they're coming to us to work on breathwork, because relationships is not just relationships with other people. It's a relationship with yourself, and your relationship with other people are a reflection of how you feel about yourself. So when we do breathwork and your intention, the natural intention is going to fall to relationships with yourself, and then as a natural byproduct, things are going to come up for you in your thoughts after your breathwork experience around yourself. And then, second, when people naturally go to is their self interacting with other people, whether that's their significant others, their parents, their kids, their friends, their communities. That's kind of our natural tendency to think about after we're thinking about ourselves. We go self, and then self is other. Now, granted, people can absolutely help. Health is a natural healing process that comes from breath work, because breath work literally affects your cellular being. It's a purging of the energy that's stuck in your body. And so many of our hormonal glands, which end up regulating a vast majority of our organ function, um, are being directly affected by the breath work process. So we breathe, we're improving the function of our hormones or our glands, which affects the production of our hormones to a healthier degree, which ends up naturally helping us work through different ailments that are coming up, whether we're having, you know, stomach issues, heart issues, muscle issues, whatever it is. Breathwork can directly affect those things. And then last is wealth. I think breathwork has a profound impact on people. If you're someone who has the direct intention of changing your wealth situation, and wealth situation is kind of like specific to your life situation, like, is that you're wanting to just make more money in your current job? Are you trying to change jobs? Like, breathwork is going to help you get into the clarity of what the specifics of what you want are, and help you again bring to the conscious mind what the roadblocks are for you coming up to get to that vision of what you really want.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Okay, so it's relationships, health, then wealth, and the breath work is what is going to make it rain. The breath work for anxious people who are kind of looking to be more peaceful helps them with relationships first and foremost. That's the thing that would make it rain the most. How much do you charge for that currently? If you are willing to share. You don't have to at all.
No, happy to share. I mean, we have different offerings to so that different people,
What's the
depending on
highest ticket
what.
one?
At the moment, we offer a 30-day one-on-one coaching program that we do breathwork and coaching, a breathwork session with you, and then what naturally comes up after is just general coaching, and it's 30 days in a row. And in those 30 days, it's a $5,000 coaching product where we're taking you for 30 days to really get you the accountability to do the breathwork every single day and dissect every single belief that's coming up in the process of you breathing through that, to help you get that transformation that you're really looking for.
I gotcha. There we go. I'm gonna ask you a crazy question now. I thought your ticket prices were gonna be lower, but this will be a fun question. See
You
if you know
well,
the
I
answer.
mean, that was the highest ticket answer. We have a lot of we have a ton of offerings on the uh between 50 and $150. We have a
Yeah,
various amount of
for sure. I'm glad I went for the highest ticket one though. Curious if you had to 10x that offer, so you had to sell it for $50,000. What would you add to the offer, and who would you sell it to?
Interesting. Okay. Well, what would you add to the offer and who would you okay. Well, I would probably add the other elements, which is so this is kind of brings back the other like goal that we were talking about. Corporate workshops are something that we have been brainstorming and hope to one day be able to dive into. And that's a little bit different. But I think that people who are in corporate um, resonate with the feeling of having so much pressure on themselves to be productive and focused and have it all together all the time. And even though these are probably people who maybe they admit they have a little level of anxiety, but more than likely because these people are kind of person who's like, I got it figured out, and I'm just trying to be better every day. And they're trying to be productive, be focused, and get it done. And yet at the same time, in that process of really having a lot of things figured out, there's also a lot that's happening under the surface.
Yep.
And so I think that kind of person, um, not only do they need the breath work, but there's a whole nother level of self reflection, which of course naturally comes with all of the offerings we have a level of self reflection, self awareness, but having a level of checking in to the point where every single hour you're asking yourself the question and being, having an external guiding and support to be able to check in with yourself to ask, why am I doing what I'm doing right now? How am I actually feeling right now? How am I actually feeling in this moment? We can say the same thing in this moment too. What does it feel like in your body? Because there's a good chance that most people who are super, and I know this because like I kind of have that tendency as a person to be like, well, I'm so focused on my goals, those dreams, that I'm not really all here. And in the process, maybe I'm getting closer to my dreams, but am I really enjoying the process of being alive? Am I living in the most purposeful existence of my life right now? Because purpose is not about your business. Your purpose is the process of you living and being in alignment with the lesson of the present moment right now. So I think these people who have that drive, that focus, are the people who need this emotional tuning in the most.
Yep.
And to answer your question about what would be added in, there's just such a higher level of involvement in being constantly checking in with yourself and being reminded of that from that external accountability. So not only are you doing breath work, but you're being pushed to check in with yourself to a point that probably feels a little bit uncomfortable, but it's what you need to be able to make that transformational difference in your life.
Yeah, I gotcha. I love it. And so we went over what would make it rain the most and how to 10x that offer. What, which one would you pick if you had to do it for 10 years straight that you would enjoy the most?
That's a good question. And because when you asked that the first time, I was like having this internal thought of like, well, would my natural answer actually be much more fulfilling? And the natural thing that came up for me is that, I have this business around climbing. And because I myself am so passionate about climbing as a tool for self development, it naturally leads me towards wanting to work with other people who are in this hobby, this passion of rock climbing. And I so want to see other people who are excited about their own self fulfillment use this amazing thing called climbing that we do for fun, and let's use it as a tool to make us happy in our lives, not just climb better routes. And so when you said that, that was a natural thing that came up, but I also, when I think that that would be a disservice to the average, to most people, because that's such a small niche of the world. And so even though it would be very cool to me, I think it would also be like this feeling of like, gosh, I'm helping such a small little portion of like the type of people that are out there. Like it's such a small version of people who are going to be willing to use climbing in that way. And maybe that's a self-limiting belief, but at the same time, and so if my natural instinct was to answer it that way, but I think in the end, even helping people who are just in the natural state of wanting to be free from the emotional cage they've put themselves in, of overwhelm, feeling so much pressure on themselves, feeling anxious, feeling like they don't really know who they are. I think that still in the end, that would be probably the most fulfilling work for me, to be able to just have an impact on that. I call it average, but the average is spectacular.
Yeah, yeah, I gotcha. So you're saying you would have more of an impact helping more people because it's not in as specific a niche, but maybe you're like 99% in instead of 100% in, as opposed to helping maybe 20 people being 100% in.
Yes, I think so.
I gotcha. Okay. Cool, cool, cool.
It's a good question. It's a good question. Makes forcing
Yeah.
I'm gonna be thinking about this now.
Hey, that's what the show's for. That's what the show's for. Awesome. Well, what are the top 1 to 2 skills that you need to develop right now to make some of these dreams and goals come true?
For myself or for like
For you need to develop. So if
for
you
me.
develop these, you're hitting these 6 dreams and goals we have written down.
So right now in my life, I think that I the biggest things that I need to be working on are a level of trust in the process, trust in uh and trust is such a weird word because I think my natural like ab- hyper logical brain thinks that trust is not a really much of a skill. And granted, I recognize that trust is a very important skill interrelation or in relationships, but trust in everything is something that I realize I have to work on a lot in my journey to get to these goals, all of them in different arenas. Trust is a big key that I realize I need to get there because my natural inclination is not necessarily to doubt myself. I don't have the self doubt of capability. I have self doubt in the world around me, or not self doubt. I have doubt in the world around me. And it's an interesting thing I've realized because earlier in my life, I had a lot of self doubt. I didn't think I was good enough. I was worthy of the capable of doing these things and being that person. And now I've kind of come to the other side of it where it's like, I know I'm capable. I know I can do it, but like, I don't believe that the stars will align. I don't believe that the opportunities will show up at the right time. And so trust is an interesting thing because it's not logical. It's all from the heart space. And so coming into my own heart space of trusting and being open about my own emotional process, which is the irony of what I'm trying to teach others at the same time,
Yeah.
is what I realized that this is the biggest thing that I need to be embracing in my life. So a lot of that has to do with stepping into heart over mind because
Yeah.
mind is not going to get me any further than I've gotten. It's helped me along to this point, and of course, there's an element that's still going to help, but coming into the heart instead of logic, the big thing I have to focus on. And I'd probably say that the other one is even having discipline of thought, because when it comes to uh, what you think has a direct impact on what you attract into your life. Um,
Yes, it
and
does.
Yeah, and so I realized that like I think there's a lot of things I do think positively about that attract things into my life, but in trying to shift out of that, and so this is really related to that trust, but I have to be more disciplined about my self-talk around that trust. So it's not even that discipline. I'll sit down and I work every day at the same time, and I'm disciplined in this physical body, but being disciplined in the mental, in my mindset, being disciplined in my self talk is a muscle that I need to flex again. I've had to go through different transformations in my life where I had to flex that muscle, and it's even if you've done it before, it's hard to do again. Having that,
Yes.
I need to stop this thought right now, even though my neural pathway it wants so bad to go down that route. It wants to say all these things, but I have to stop because if I'm really committed to wanting this thing, if I'm really telling the world that this is what I want, I need to prove it. And I need to prove it not in just in my physical actions and aligned action. I also need to prove it in believing and saying these things to myself that I am that kind of person. And that kind of person, well, she doesn't think like that. She thinks like this. She needs to start thinking that way right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a quick question for you. Do you think that your doubt in the stars aligning and trusting the outside world is a kind of disconnected manifestation of self-doubt? And I asked this question, let me give some context. Steve Jobs talked about the fact, and you kind of just alluded to the fact that, a lot of people go through the world and this is what Steve Jobs was saying, they don't realize how much they can influence the world. But what he realized, and the world gets magical when you do realize that you can start to poke and prod reality, and reality will start to shape around your pokes and your prods because everything that is here and that ever will be here was first thought of by a man or a woman. And so I'm curious about, we clearly have such an impact, not only on ourselves, but on the people and the environment around us. Do you think like a lack of trust in the stars aligning could be a like disconnected manifestation of a lack of belief in yourself to influence the stars to align?
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely all connected. I mean, I completely believe in the like all the modern research on like the quantum the idea of quantum physics that what you think materializes, and if you
Mm,
hold an intention for a thought long enough, it materializes into physical matter. And so that alongside, you can look at law of attraction stuff, but I think Dr. Joe Dispenza does a really good job of explaining it a little bit more on a rational end. But I mean, at the end of the day, the fact is what we think does materialize, and what shows up in your life is a reflection of what you believe in some way or another. Maybe it's showing you something that you do believe this thing, and therefore it shows up. But if I doubt this thing, then this opportunity and the situation is going to arise where it reaffirms that belief.
yeah.
Or maybe there's this one opportunity that shows up and is giving you the chance to change that belief. And you can, if you're willing and you're willing to look at it from that perspective, then you can change that belief. But if not, yeah, absolutely what you're saying, all of those things are highly interlinked. And so I realized the interesting variations of, at one point in my life, I had a strong self-talk dialogue around worthiness. And then it became, a lot around this idea of capability. And then it became this trust thing. And they're kind of all the same, maybe different variations. But it's also interesting because it kind of just shows that your brain is addicted to finding something, whatever it is, it's gonna find. Now great, now you feel good about yourself, you feel confident, but now let's find another way to look at this from a negative space that you. And so I realized that my own trust in ability to trust the process is absolutely a reflection of my ability to trust in myself from a non-logical perspective, not from a, well, I know that I'm capable of building a landing page and I know I'm capable of helping people go through this process, but actually just trust, like I said, trusting yourself from a heart space belief, which my logical brain's like, well, that's ridiculous. It's a heart space belief. But I also know in what I'm in my journey and what I've learned and what I've experienced in the process of coaching other people, I do realize that for me to change that trust in the world, or in trust in the process for the stars to align, starts with me starting to trust myself by connecting back into my own being, my own body, my own heart, and not dissociating like so many of us struggle with.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Well, cool. Thanks for diving into that. Thanks for
Mm-hmm.
entertaining my grilling, really, my deep dive questions into your life. We are right around that hour mark, so we got to cut it off. But is there anything else you want to chat about before we sign off?
Gosh, I mean, there's so many things, but I mean,
I
I think,
know, I want to keep going too. Oh, a lot. Maybe we'll have to have you back on. Maybe that's what we'll have to do.
yeah.
There we go. Well, awesome. Gabby, thanks so much for coming on the show. Where should people reach you?
So you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on YouTube, and you can find me on my website, all at Gabi Robledo. So it's GABI ROBLEDO. On my Instagram, you'll find links to my Be the Hero Academy Instagram. You can also go to Be the Hero Academy website, but you'll also find a link to that on my personal website. But at Gabi Robledo, you'll find links to all of the different coaching platforms. And from there, you can explore what resonates with you.
Sounds good. Well, Gabby, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Of course. And if you guys are listening to this and you liked what Gabby had to say, you want to check her out, make sure to do so. All the links will be down in the show notes. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you on the next one. And on that note, we're out. Hey there, thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to leave a review and send it to a friend. Don't forget, head over to workwithtimmydouglas.com to get your list of life-changing questions and our free book, Impact Ignition. Live a purposeful life. See you tomorrow for another show.